All right, everyone, as promised, ending the day on the midterms, just like they began on the midterms, with regards to Kavanaugh specifically. We're going to talk about nothing else because, nobody cares about any other topic. Right now, of course, a little bit of a hiatus, and then you have a week-long FBI investigation extravaganza. The FBI, that is blatantly partisan, is going to do a great job of investigating Kavanaugh. Now, Trump has artificially limited the scope of the investigation that's allowed to specifically credible accusations. Essentially, they're going to investigate Christine Ford's 35-year-old complaint. Since she can't remember minor details, it's not going to go anywhere. The FBI is going to end up coming out and saying, look, it's a he said, she said scenario. They've already said that they're going to do this. If prompted to investigate, they'd be like, hey, we can't grant a warrant. We can't do shit. There's no evidence involved. It's a dead case of he said, she said, in which there's no tangible evidence. The prosecutor that was hired there to do the questioning so that the Republicans wouldn't look like bullies because, again, they're cowards and they don't want to stand up for the concept that a person ought to be not presumed guilty right away, that we shouldn't have witch hunts. The Republicans are like, no, please, female sex crime prosecutor, exonerate us of having to have balls. She's apparently in private session. When she was meeting with the Republicans after, she's like, no, based on what I hear here, I wouldn't seek a warrant because it would go nowhere. It would be improper to begin an investigation into this case because there is no evidence. I can believe that was actually said. That's just a claim by an unnamed source, so take it or leave it, I suppose. But it makes sense. I know that if I was looking at this, I'd say, if I were a cop, I'd be like, okay, 35 years ago you were assaulted. You can't remember where it was, what day it happened, any of the circumstances. All you remember is who did it. Well, I can't crucify this person, put him in a cell, and drag them through the court system based on that alone. I'm going to need a little bit more. There is no credible claim against Brett Kavanaugh. People often said, this was popular, I think. People are like, well, just imagine if your daughter was Christine Ford. Just imagine if your son was Brett Kavanaugh. Imagine that your son is dragged before the entire public and called a gang rapist. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that the government of your own goddamn country is trying to crucify him up on the world stage, and imagine that the people that are meant to defend him against spurious accusations, because he's your son and would totally never do anything wrong, imagine that they completely cower, refuse to defend him because they're fearful. Imagine that. Yeah, I think that you'd feel kind of bad now, wouldn't you, about your son's life being fundamentally ruined. Look, even after the FBI almost inevitably says there's no case here, he's fine, as far as we can tell, there's no evidence of wrongdoing. Even after that, the pall of these claims is going to hang over his head for the rest of his goddamn life. And it's going to hang over his family's head for the rest of their goddamn lives. That's the result of the Democratic Party. Feinstein got a letter long time ago with regards to this complaint. And instead of doing what she needed to do, which is expose it immediately and say, look, there's a claim up here, we need to investigate this, FBI involved, what do they think? Instead of doing that, she waits until right before the confirmation, and then she turns around, lies to the whole country and says, no, it's totally not political that I did this. Yeah, I sat on this claim, she didn't want it coming forth, but, not only am I violating her trust by putting it forth anyway, wink, wink, I never planned to do that, but, situations and shit. But it's not political at all that I sat on it this whole time. I sat on a criminal complaint, then released it despite the fact that the person who came to me in confidence didn't even want it released. Then all of a sudden it spawns a circus where Avenatti and all these other attention whores are coming out. And they're saying, well, our clients have an allegation too. They're not credible. There's no evidence. These are people that are jumping on the bandwagon to get attention. I will say that outright. Absolutely. There's no truth to those claims. They have nothing, by the way, involved with the original claim. Look, it's just sensationalism. I think at this point, some people have learned that you can defame another person, and as long as it is a he said, she said scenario, and they can't quite prove that it destroyed their life, you can do that and get away with it. You can do that online too, like the Wall Street Journal and BuzzFeed defame YouTubers constantly. They get away with it. In a handful of cases, you can prove that there was actual fiscal harm done. Maybe you can sue. But then again, the average YouTuber doesn't have the income to do that now, do they? How wonderful for the corporate media. The same corporate media that right now is still dragging Kavanaugh over the coals. The New York Times has since they know that the FBI is going to say there's no evidence of wrongdoing. Almost certainly. What's the New York Times new tactic now for Kavanaugh? Oh! He doesn't have the temperament to be in SCOTUS. He got emotional up on this thing. Hey, you're a gang rapist, a horrible person. You should be in a cell. Our fans think your family should be targeted for assassination and torture, and that your wife should be gang raped and stuff. Oh, why are you getting emotional? Why are you getting upset about me saying these things? Are you nuts? This is the New York Times, supposedly like credible journalists. Oh, he doesn't have the temperament. No, Christine Ford didn't have the temperament to be up there in front of Congress, perjuring herself probably in the process. The New York Times doesn't have the intellectual temperament to produce news. All you produce at this point is sensationalist bullshit garbage, which is why your readership is down. The same is true of most of the corporate media. No, that the Kavanaugh confirmation is delayed again by another week by Grassley and McConnell and all these other morons. The Republicans, despite the fact that Kavanaugh is almost certainly innocent, almost certainly ends up getting confirmed, the Republicans are still skirting disaster. I'll tell you what. The Republicans run the risk now of alienating, not centrist voters, women voters, fucking whatever that means. No, alienating their own core fan base. Basically, hey, we elected you people to do a job. We were all excited about getting a second SCOTUS judge. We're hoping Ginsburg keels over before you can lose control of the Senate, possibly. Now you're delaying it over and over again. Where are your balls? Lindsey fucking Graham is now the testosterone supplier of the Republicans in the Senate. How funny can you possibly get? What timeline are we living in? Jeff Flake's like, oh, I'm not running for re-election. Let me stymie the whole party. Just fucking kick him out of the Senate or something. The Republicans should kick him aside. So you're no longer a Republican. Be an independent, which is what you apparently are. Because we're sitting here, we're looking at false allegations against a SCOTUS nominee, and you are resigned to shutting down government, essentially. And you're calling the FBI in when the FBI has already responded initially and said there's no evidence. No, there's no evidence. We can't get involved. There were calls for an FBI investigation early on. Trump now has to fucking command an FBI investigation. He had to limit its scope, obviously. The Republicans look very, very weak and very, very confused right now. The only Republicans that don't are Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump. And even Donald Trump's like, he had no choice but to call up the investigation. Oh yeah, whatever you want, Chuck. Whatever you want, Jeff. You fucking losers. Can you imagine when he went back into his office after saying, yeah, we'll do the investigation, blah, 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 it'll be a week long, whatever. Now Christine Ford's lawyer's like, no, we don't agree to it just being a week long. So basically, again, it's just a game that you're playing. The Democrats and Ford's lawyer and all these other opportunistic morons are playing a game in which they want to continuously delay the confirmation, preferably until, after the midterms. It's the whole fucking point. They don't want him to be seated now. They want him to wait until spring, and they want it to be after the midterms to demoralize Republican voters. That's all it's about. These claims, specifically the latter claims by the other two claimants, would never be taken seriously if they were aimed in any other situation. They wouldn't be taken seriously. It would be seen as the political hack job that it really was. And those are the main claims. What Christine Ford is claiming, she can't even tell you where it happened. I don't know what to tell you. At this point, it's like, okay, the legal system. Yeah, and the Democrats are like, well, he's supposed to be nonpartisan. He looked mighty partisan the other day. What do you expect? Your whole party is calling him a gang rapist. So you think it's a good idea to take someone who's probably going to be confirmed to SCOTUS and rake them over the coals so that for the rest of his life he's like, oh, yeah, I'm deciding this case. All the Democrats want me to decide one way. The Republicans want me to decide another. Now, I'm supposed to be unbiased, but, those Democrats called me a gang rapist. I'm in an interesting position here now, aren't I? I'm warning you that this could be the case. And when Lindsey Graham comes out and says, well, if this is how we're going to do these nomination processes, if this is going to happen for allegations from now on, the Democrats had better be, very concerned and afraid. He's warning you, you idiots. He's not saying this to sound malicious. Look, this is the same warning that people gave you when you got rid of the Senate filibuster on judicial nominees years ago. It's the same warning. It's the same reasoning. It's like, hey, you're trying to change the way in which the political system operates. You're doing it for opportunistic purposes. What about when the other party is in your position and you're in their position? It's going to come back to bite you in the ass now a little bit, isn't it? Oh no, they don't worry about that. See, you're not playing long game, you're only thinking short term. If the Democrats, lay people have any intelligence, they'll collapse their own party to get rid of their inept, stupid leadership and reform their party into something that's capable of surviving in the 21st century. Right now, it's really, the Democrats are a relic of the 80s and 90s. Same is true of many of the Republicans. They're slowly being, defeated. The Trump Republicans are outperforming them at this point. It's washing away the old detritus within the party. When I saw that Wexner, whatever his name is, the Maine, Ohio billionaire donor to the Republicans, when he said, well, I saw Obama's speech, now I'm a Democrat. Good riddance. The Republican Party doesn't need old octogenarian billionaires. That's the past of the Republican Party. The only old billionaire at the moment that you have that's doing any good is Trump. It's the Trump Party. And that's, I think, for better, not for worse. That's about all. Peace out.